Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Sap, forgive me if my voice is a little bit gone today. As you know, I was at the Celtics last night, so I was doing my fair share of yelling. Fortunately, I didn't have to scream for all that long as the Celtics pulled away very, very quickly in that game, outscoring the Miami Heat 29-11 in the first quarter, and it was over from there. Heck, it was really over from within the first half of the first quarter, as the Celtics cruised to a 102-82 victory, and even this series up at 2 games apiece. Sap, we talked a lot about yesterday about what went wrong for the Celtics in Game 3. Well, for the most part, they cleaned that up. Only 9 turnovers compared to 23 the game before. What else went right for the Celtics in this game?
Well, it was three areas, Jet. First of all, the turnovers, absolutely. They cut it in half and then some from Game 3. And look, if they take care of the basketball, they're going to beat Miami because Miami depends on creating turnovers, getting into transition, getting some easy baskets, getting into their offense quickly. If you don't turn the ball over, now you put them in a half-court situation where they are challenged, especially when you look at Miami battling some injuries. Kyle Lowry is really not 100%. Jimmy Butler's probably not at 100%. Tyler Hero wasn't playing last night. And as soon as Bam Adebayo saw Rob Williams, he went from being the best player on the court in Game 3 to minimized last night. Heck, Miami's 5 starters scored a grand total of 18 points. That doesn't even seem possible. But in addition to cutting back the turnovers, the Celtics were able to go to the free throw line a heck of a lot more than the Miami Heat did. Miami was 8 of 14 from the free throw line. The Celtics 32 of 38. That's a huge advantage. And then the rebounding edge, 60-39, a massive edge for the Celtics in terms of rebounding. So free throw shooting, getting to the line, nearly 3 times as many times as Miami, having a 60-39 edge on the boards, and then cutting those turnovers in more than half from Game 3. You put that all together in a blender, despite shooting less than 40% from the floor and less than 25% from 3, it was a 20-point victory. Remember last week we talked about if the Celtics aren't hitting their threes, how do they win? Well, when they don't turn the ball over, get to the line, dominate the boards, then that defense can take hold and they'll win by 20 points with less than a perfect offensive performance, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely, Sap. I think that was a good sign in terms of things that we did bring up. Like, okay, well, this team does need to find a way to score if they're not hitting their threes. And as you said, really only Peyton Pritchard was hitting his threes last night. He was the only guy to kind of knock them down consistently. And some of it was when the game was already well within hand. But the free throws were key, absolutely. And not only was it getting to line, Sap, but they were making them, 84% from the free throw line, where they've struggled at times in this series. Tatum obviously led the way, 14 of 16 from the free throw line. So that was really important. But yeah, we can't, you just got to keep hammering home. And if you're Ime Udoka, you keep saying this to your team, we don't turn the ball over, we win the game, period. As you said, Sap, a second ago, Miami is extremely reliant on creating points off of turnovers in the fast break. They kind of need that to win because they are challenged in the half court. And obviously, they're not as challenged in the half court as what you saw last night, where, you have Jimmy Butler shoot 3 of 14 from the floor. You have no starters in double figures. You have Strus goes 0 of 7, 0 of 4 from 3. That's not going to happen every night where you're going to shoot a historically low percentage. But at the same time, I do feel like for Miami to win games, they need to score about 15 plus points in transition off of turnovers. That's their sort of model for scoring, and they're capable of doing it. We've seen them do it in this series. But when you don't allow them to do that, suddenly it becomes very, very challenging for them to win a game.
Yeah, I mean, in Game 3, they had 33 points off of turnovers. Thus, they were able to win. But, yeah, if it's the half court, they really do struggle. And it just got to the point, even in the first quarter, where it just felt like Miami just gave up. They said, well, we came to Boston. We won Game 3. We got our home court back. Why bother, trying to make some sort of comeback here when they were down 18-1, midway through the first quarter, and then 29-11. It's almost like they just gave up and said, fine, we'll move on. It's a best of 3. We have home court advantage. It almost feels like in this series, Jet, that there's actually load managing going on.
Yeah, it does.
Within the Eastern Conference Finals, right? I mean, Butler leaves game 3 at halftime because Miami looks like they're in control. By the middle of the third quarter, Miami was out of it last night. So Butler and Kyle Lowry, the veterans on the team, went to the bench. Marcus Smart doesn't play last night. If his ankle's that bad, what is he doing sitting on the bench? Why isn't he getting round-the-clock treatment? And then they said he will be pretty much sure to go in game 5. Like, I don't know what happens between game 4 and game 5 that the ankle's going to miraculously that much better. Rob Williams looked good last night. Didn't have to play a lot of minutes because they were in complete control. And now, again, we'll have to see if he's available for game 5. Tyler Hero, I didn't even see him get hurt in game 3, sits out game 4, and is expected to play in game 5. There's like a load managing going on in a series, which is kind of scary.
A lot of
it's
injuries.
Not good for the league.
No, it's not.
It's not good for the league because here we are where, this is probably going to be a 7-game series without any really memorable games. And here's an interesting fact. The last 17 playoff games this year in the NBA, the average margin of victory is 20 points per game. Like, it's just been blowout after blowout. Now, clutch situations in the NBA is considered 5 points or less within the final 5 minutes of a game. So if you look at those 17 games, there was a potential of 85 clutch moments, 85 clutch minutes. There's only been 7 in the last 17 games, 7 minutes. Ooh. So I'm throwing a lot of numbers out there. What I'm essentially saying is every game's a blowout, and it doesn't really come down to much drama. I mean, game 3, the Celtics were down 26 at one point. They crawled back to within 1 over the last 2 minutes and 40 seconds. And that felt like a real playoff game with a lot at stake. Other than that, it's like, oh, the first quarter's over. This game's over. I mean, Miami in this series had 2 quarters where they scored 39 points, but they've also had a quarter where they scored 11. Like, that just doesn't compute. It really feels like load management's taking place.
No, it's like if you can get up 20, the game's over. That's, and that's sort of what the opposite of the NBA has been, especially the last decade plus with the rise of the 3-point shooting, is that 20-point leads are essentially meaningless. But in this series, it's like, okay, well, they're up big. We're just going to, kind of pack it in, wait for the next game. The team that figures out how to not do that is going to be the team that wins the series. And I said yesterday when we did the show, Sep, I think whoever won the game last night is going to win the series. So I'm going to say the Celtics are going to end up winning this thing. And at the beginning, I said Celtics in 7. So I'll hold to that. But yeah, it certainly doesn't look like we're going to get a close game. I would, from a basketball standpoint, I would like a close game. As a Celtics fan, I hope they just continue to blow out the Heat the rest of the series so I don't have to worry about it. But if I'm, a casual observer, I'm not watching this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're living in Ohio and you really don't have a rooting interest, but you love basketball, it's 29-11 after the first quarter. And you're like, okay, is this ever going to be a competitive game? And it never was. The league just continued to grow to the point in the fourth quarter where, you're just emptying the benches to see who you can get off on the court there and go talk about what I wasn't realizing that player X played for that team. I wasn't even aware of that. So go ahead.
I was going to say, Sap, with the big lead the Celtics got to early, again, outscored Miami 29-11 in the first quarter. And I think you said 18, they were up 18-1 at one point. Miami hadn't hit a field goal. Was it more something the Celtics did right or Miami just not being able to do anything offensively?
Miami did nothing offensively. I mean, they had some open shots, right? I mean, as good as the Celtics defense is, it's not the 85 Bears. They're not going to just, shut you down. Sorry for the cross-sport reference, but
yeah, I like the cross-sport reference.
I went ahead and picked, an all-time great defense because the Celtics at times looked like that, but it was just as much that the Miami Heat looked like the 85 Patriots in that Super Bowl where they couldn't get out of their own way. And a lot of that had to do with the Celtics defense. And again, when Rob Williams plays, that defense is different.
So different. Yeah. Rob Williams is massive for them.
Not just on the defensive end, Jet, where it's obvious, right? On the offensive end, and I think Kendrick Perkins at halftime pointed this out. I know you were at the game, but what I'll do is I watched obviously the ESPN or ABC broadcast, and then I'll flip over to NBC Sports Boston for halftime because the halftime show on ESPN ABC is like 2 minutes. It's like Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith yells, Jalen Rose gives you some insight, Mike Greenberg throws to commercial. That seems like what's halftime, or at least with Perkins or Eddie House or Scalabrine, they give you a little bit of insight. And what Perkins said is that Rob Williams on the offensive end was creating so much for the Celtics because Bam Adebayo was so concerned about the lob that he actually was setting up defensively closer to the basket than more in the middle of the lane. So that allowed the Celtics to drive to the basket and get their offense going. And their offense never felt really smooth last night. I mean, again, they shot under 40% from the floor, under 25% from three. They had a bad night.
You only had like two guys who were relatively efficient. I guess Rob Williams is always efficient, but Tatum and Pritchard were really the only guys who were jump shooting that were at all, efficient. And Tatum was 1 of 7 from 3. He just happened to be 8 of 16 from the floor.
Jaylen Brown was bad.
Yes.
I thought Derek White after the first 3 minutes was bad. I mean, he did get them off to a 7-0 start, which is important because
but after that,
they haven't been able to get off of that.
He started 3 of 3. I looked at this because I put, my 3 up, 3 down. I put him on the down list and somebody said, how could you do that? Well, he did start 3 of 3. And after that, he proceeded to go 1 of 11 for the rest of the game.
That's okay though, because that 3 of 3 got them off to that 7-0.
It did. Start. It was a good start, but I'm saying like Sap. So I was at the game, as we've said a couple of times. The crowd was audibly groaning every single time he would shoot.
Oh, I think he groans every time he shoots. I mean, he's not a good shooter. And this is a guy who is so up and down offensively. Look, he's a good defender. He can distribute the basketball. He's a pro. We like the player, but he's so streaky as a shooter. In one playoff series 3 years ago, he had a 4-point game and a 36-point game all in the same series. I mean, you talk about ups and downs. He fits right into this series, right? Because some nights teams look really good, and other nights it looks like they would have been better off staying at their hotel. So, yeah,
it was funny though, Sap.
Job.
It was like, with him, he got off to the hot start. He's like, everybody's like, Derek White needs to have a big game tonight, a good game because Smart was out. And I think White was like, okay, I really need to play well. And for the first 2 minutes, he started out like a house on fire and the team got up big. And I think he, at that point, he was like, okay, I can revert back to being a terrible shooter now. Like he was like, I did my job. I scored, 7 points early. I can relax now and start missing threes.
Someone scored an early goal in hockey and then just mailed it in from there because he got a 1-0 lead, which, the other thing about this series, and this is just a strange series when you're 2-2 and, some team has dominated one game and the other team's dominated another. There's only been 4 lead changes in this entire series. I mean,
that's remarkable. That
just doesn't happen, right? The Celtics led from wire to wire last night. Miami led wire to wire in game 3. Game 2 was the one game where, the Heat got off to an early lead and the Celtics came back, but then there was no back and forth. And the same thing kind of happened in game 1. There was only one lead change. Celtics led the whole first half. And then once Miami took the lead, it was done. So
it's like just you get the lead, the game is over.
It's over with. I mean, it's like watching soccer. Or like I said, it's tennis a little bit in a sense that we keep hearing about who's winning quarters, which means absolutely nothing. But also kind of like in tennis, it's like, oh, the other player's up 5-1 or 4-1 in this set. Why bother? I'm going to lose the set. Let me start fresh at 0-0 in the next set. Or if you're on grass with 2 huge servers, it's like we're going to a tiebreak set, so let's just get there. It almost gets the feeling of the macro feel of this series that we're going 7 games. So the first 6 games is really just kind of feeling out process.
Right. It's like, here, you take this one. Okay. Well, you take the next one. We'll just play it for game 7. It's been a
that's
weird
not
series.
Good. That's not good for the league, though.
No, it's not at all. And it is weird too, because these are two, obviously they're this far in the playoffs, very competitive teams who have both been to the Eastern Conference Finals before with a similar roster makeup and, are both really desperate to sort of break through and win a title. And yet there hasn't really been much of a sense of desperation in these games from both teams at the same time. Celtics obviously were desperate to win that game last night because he couldn't go down 3-1 head back to Miami, but they looked like the only team that was trying to play. And in the game prior, that's what Miami looked like. So yeah, it's weird because you would think with the makeup of these two teams that they're, highly competitive defense first teams, that they would be very close games, but they have not.
Yeah, and we'll see. I think game 5 obviously is huge, more important for Miami because they're at home. If the Celtics can win this thing, then they take control of it and have a chance to wrap this thing up on Friday at TD Garden and move on to the finals. So I think they're the better team. We both agree on that. Again, their ceiling is higher than Miami's. Their floor at times is lower than Miami's floor. And if you could just keep Miami in the half court, you beat them. So take care of the basketball is priority one, and they did that last night, and that's the biggest reason they were able to win. But again, when you have 38 free throw attempts and you shoot over 80%, and the other team goes 8 for 14, another huge advantage. And when you control the board 60-39, that's a huge advantage, because if Miami's going to shoot that poorly, you don't want to give them second and third opportunities. I mean, they controlled the boards, whether it was Horford or Rob Williams or whoever. So it was just a solid game by the Celtics on that end, but offensively, very, very choppy. But they can win with this style because they play such good defense. And that pretty much is something that is there every game. They're going to play good defense. They may give up some points when they're turning the ball over. That is going to happen, but their defense is consistent.
Oh, I think you hit the nail on the head, Sap. If they take care of the ball, they win the series. And that's what obviously what Coach Udoka is saying to them. And I think the players know that, because most of the turnovers, we talked about this yesterday on the show, most of the turnovers were unforced errors, lazy passes. You know, there were some strips in there, but most of them were just like really, really bad passes that led to easy offense for Miami. If you don't let that happen, you win the game, even if you don't shoot well, which is what happened last night. So the Celtics obviously know the path to victory, the formula to win this series. Whether they're able to replicate that is what the question will be for the remaining, 3 games, if there are that, because we're at the best of we're best out of 3 now.
I think they're in control of this series. I felt like they were in control of the series from the get-go. It's just that they've never really had a lead in this series. They've won games 2 and 4.
You could make the case that it should be a sweep. I mean, with the exception of 2 really bad quarters.
Yeah, but that's an important part of it. I mean,
no, I know, but I'm saying that they've played. You think they look at themselves and go, if we had just not turned the ball over 23 freaking times and made our free throws, we would have won that game. And again, if you don't get outscored by 25 points in a quarter to Miami, maybe you win that game too. So I feel like the Celtics have a much more like confidence of where they are compared to where Miami is at this point.
Yeah, I don't think Miami will waver though, because there's such a veteran group with Butler and Lowry, and PJ Tucker's a champion, winning last year with Milwaukee, and of course Lowry won with Toronto 3 years ago.
Was the only guy who stepped up for Miami last night.
Yeah, he outscored the entire starting unit of Miami. He had 23 points, and Miami starters at 18. And if he's getting closer to being healthy, there's going to be a market for him in the offseason, unless Miami decides to keep him, which I think they should. But yeah, it was just a strange series between these two teams.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's going to continue. Again, like we said, it probably will. And then Game 7 will be competitive. But you're right. It's not good for the league. I don't know that there's any way to police it to make it better. But, sometimes you have weird series. You've alluded to this, Sap. You've watched basketball for longer than I have, and I've watched it for a while. That sometimes 7-game series has mostly blowouts in it.
It can have. Here's the difference, though. Okay, so you go back to even some of the great series in the 80s with the Lakers and the Celtics. It'll be a 7-game series, and each team will have a blowout. Then each team will have a comfortable win. Then each team will have a close win, and then you'll have another game, which is like an X factor, like a comeback or a blown lead or both or whatever the case may be. You'll get that. In this case, it's like it's halftime. Do we really need to watch the second half? Now, in Game 1, you did, because the Celtics had the lead. Miami came back and won. And then, really since then, it's been whichever team has the lead at the half is just going through the motions in the second half, and they're going to win handily. So, again, this kind of goes back to the Game 7s of the prior series. Celtics play Milwaukee Game 7, they win by 25, and then Dallas goes into Phoenix and wins Game 7 by 33. So you're sitting there as a basketball fan on a Sunday, you've got 2 Game 7s. It's like, this is great. We want to see competitive games, and they're both blowouts, and they're like feel like they're over by the middle of the second quarter. Never good.
Well, so I guess the question I have for you, Sap, has just popped in my head is, which series has been more exciting? The Golden State Dallas series that's 3-0, or the Celtics Heat series that's 2-2, but every game's been a blowout?
I would still say the Celtics series. I mean, because Game 1 was weird. The Celtics had a 13-point lead in the second quarter, 8 at the half, and then lost it. Then Miami came out 18-8 lead early in game 2, and then the Celtics blew doors from that point. And then game 3, it was wire to wire from Miami, but it did get close. Obviously, when the Celtics cut it at 1 with less than 3 minutes left. And last night was really boring to watch. I mean, rooting for the Celtics, you want to see them win. It's a must win. Important that they won, but that was not riveting basketball. Dallas, I know Dallas had a sizable lead in game 2, and Golden State came back, but at least this thing is 2-2. It's kind of weird too, Jeff, because if you go back to that first series, the Celtics sweep Brooklyn, but the games were fairly close. I mean, in 2 of the games, I felt the Celtics were in control, but it was still
there was a buzzer beater in game 1.
Right off the top, right. So you win 4 games by a total of 18 points, and here we are just having blowout after blowout. Again, as I said, the last 17 playoff games in this playoff run in the NBA this season, the average margin of victory is 20 points. So we sit down expecting a blowout. If it's close, it's a surprise.
That's what it's been. It is strange, and it's again not great for the league. But I think they're just hoping that once we get to the finals, the games will be more competitive. And obviously for Golden State, it's a fait accompli at this point. They're going to be in the finals. No team's ever come back from 3-0, and I certainly don't think the Mavericks are equipped to be that team. We have no idea who's going to end up coming out of the Celtics Heat series, but a team that is not involved at all, Sap, are your Los Angeles Lakers, who did not make the playoffs, but they are on the verge of potentially hiring a new coach. It looks like they've narrowed their list down to 3 guys. Darvin Ham, the assistant coach from Milwaukee, appears to be the favorite right now. Other guys they're considering are Terry Stotts, who was the Blazers coach for a while and did a pretty good job there. And who's the third guy? Is it Kenny Atkinson, Sep?
Kenny Atkinson, yeah, who's an assistant with Golden State now and was a really good coach with Brooklyn before they signed KD and Durant. You remember he got them into the playoffs with all that culture, and then those guys showed up and they moved on from Kenny Atkinson.
They said, we don't want to play with this guy.
We don't want to coach. We don't want to coach this guy.
We want Steve Nash.
You're right. Somebody who has no clue yet. I would go with Darvin Ham. I mean, Stotts had a long run in Portland. I don't think he's a really good defensive coach. Portland always had issues with defense.
It didn't end well there, Sap. I can tell you as for somebody who I follow the Blazers, because, I live there and I have a lot of friends who are Blazers fans. They were very happy to see him go at the end.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to go to Terry Stotts, why not just keep Frank Vogel at that point? I mean, it seems to be, a similar level of coach. Atkinson, I think, is a really good coach, but I think Ham is a guy who, has some championship DNA, assistant coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. I think he's a coach, kind of like Ime Udoka, who, was a journeyman player, has worked in as assistant, highly respected. And I think a guy that the players will respect. He's a commanding presence, right? 6'7", big guy who, I'm not saying he's going to start fighting players. I'm not calling for that, but I think they'll respect him like the Celtics respect Ime Udoka. I mean, you can even see
it would be a similar hire, similar idea.
A guy that you're not going to try to run through because, he looks like a guy that, again, I'm not saying we're going to have fisticuffs here, but is a commanding presence. And that sometimes can be important. And I think that would be the best choice. I mean, they kind of kicked the idea of Juwan Howard, but why is he leaving Michigan to go to the Lakers? I think that would be a step down. He's done quite well at Michigan.
And I think his sons are headed there, Sap.
His sons are
right?
going to play there. Exactly. I mean, he's running basketball. Harbaugh's running football. They're former players there. They're well compensated, and it's a pretty good situation for both Juwan Howard and for Jim Harbaugh. So why leave?
Howard's probably getting paid more than what the Lakers would offer anyways, knowing what the Lakers do with the coaches.
Right. And Michigan's got plenty of money, and he's not going to go anywhere if he wants to stay there for the next 7-8 years. It's his, and maybe he'll jump back into the NBA as a head coach, but maybe in a better situation than with the Lakers. The Lakers is a tough job because the Lakers don't necessarily pay as well as some of the other teams. And also, you're going to be the scapegoat, right? Because if this works out well, LeBron James is going to get credit, my favorite player of all time. I get it, but I understand what the narrative will be. But if you lose, it's going to be the coach's fault. So not the easiest place to coach, but I think Darvin Ham would be the right choice. And Doc Rivers' name is still kind of floating out there, and maybe, there would be some compensation to pry him away from Philadelphia. But I think Darvin Ham would be a good choice for the Lakers to move on for the next head coach.
if from what I gather, Sap, I follow a lot of Lakers fans on Twitter too. It seems like Darvin Ham's also the most popular choice amongst
Mhm.
the fan base. And I think there's the degree of, we talked about this last year with Brad Stevens, is that he never played in the NBA, obviously, and so as good of an X's and O's coach as he was, and that's, I think, up for debate, is that it's always going to be hard to relate to the players when you haven't been through that grind of playing in the NBA.
Mhm.
And I know Ime Udoka and Darvin Ham weren't necessarily, massive celebrities, but, they know what the trappings of the NBA lifestyle comes with. They've seen teammates who have been, successfully managed their money, teammates who probably lost all their money, teammates who got involved with this, that, and the other thing. So they know how it goes. And
Mhm.
I actually think that those journeymen probably end up being better head coaches than the star type of player, because the journeymen see more and are less, star players could sometimes be in a bubble of their own making. And aren't necessarily interacting with their teammates the same way and aren't seeing things the same way. And how the real NBA is, they're protected, which that's how it works in sports. That's how it works with movies. The character actors aren't going to see the same things that the star act. They're not getting as nice of a trailer as Tom Hanks is getting. That's
Mhm.
how it goes. So I think that the fact that those sort of journeyman players who played a long time in the league, Udoka I think played 7 years, Darvin Ham probably around the same. They know how to relate to all types of players. So I think that Ham would be a good choice for the Lakers. But as you said, Sap, it's a complicated job. One, because LeBron knows more than whoever they're going to hire, and has resisted coaching in the past. Westbrook, I mean, really, really resists coaching. If you think LeBron resists coaching, then Westbrook is a whole other level. And then you have to deal with, how do you manage Anthony Davis? How do you reach him about the conditioning stuff? So there's a lot of challenges that come with it. Darvin Ham, obviously, if he gets offered the job, would accept it. But it is definitely a challenging job.
And who's your boss at some point? Obviously, Jeannie Buss signs the
Linda
check.
Rambis.
She's the owner. Linda Rambis, Kurt Rambis. Is Phil Jackson involved? Is he part of the group that's going to hire you? What's Rob Pelinka doing? Magic Johnson still has his hands involved. And then you've got LeBron, who, obviously carries a lot of weight in that organization. So it doesn't appear to be the easiest place to coach. And again, if things work out, it's LeBron. And if it doesn't work out, it's the coach's fault. And that's the way it's going to work there. But I think Darvin Ham would make the most sense. And again, as you said, Jet, a lot of the all-time great players don't make great coaches. Larry Bird had success as a coach. Jason Kidd's had some nice success here, getting Dallas to the conference finals.
Yeah, but it took him a while, right?
It took him a while. Yeah, it took him a while, and he evolved. But Isaiah Thomas was not a really good coach. Magic Johnson was a disaster. I could never see Michael Jordan coaching. That wouldn't work. He'd have he would probably knock out half his players. So you don't see that. Pat Riley, an all-time great coach, was a backup player. He was a first-round pick out of Kentucky, but he was kind of a journeyman player and evolved into a great coach. Popovich never played in the NBA. So that's what you kind of see. Generally, those journeyman guys like Ime Udoka or Darvin Ham. So I think that makes the most sense.
And we see Steve Nash, 2-time MVP, really struggling to coach.
Steve Kerr does well because he was
journeyman.
Again, a journeyman, a good player, won a lot of championships, and that kind of rubs off. But exactly, and Kerr was always a guy too that he was a really good broadcaster. He was a good executive, excellent player. He kind of went through it all. Nash was playing tennis, killing time, and they said, "You want to coach the Nets?" And he said, "That sounds cool."
Same as Doc, right? Good player. Maybe,
Yep.
He was an all-star, but certainly not a star player and a great broadcaster. Like I think he's a phenomenal broadcaster. Actually, I know you like his broadcasting as well. And like you said, locker room leader and stuff like that. So that I think that Ham, if I'm a Celtics fan, I want the Lakers to screw it up. So I'd like them to hire, Terry Stotts. I think that would be, the good pick for them. But, if I'm you, I agree. Darvin Ham's the best selection. I did read something today that the Lakers are sort of slow playing this to see, you said Doc Rivers, if he comes available. Do you think that's true? Or do you think that they're going to wrap this thing up?
I think they'll just wrap it up and give it to Darvin Ham, although it's still early. We're still in May, and this isn't football where you hire the head coach because you got to put this massive staff together and bring in a new offense or a new defense. You can hire your head coach in June or July. It doesn't have to happen right now. And again, there probably would be compensation with Doc Rivers, a second-round pick, a player. I don't know what they would have to give up for Doc Rivers. I think Doc would be a good choice there. He understands the culture in LA. He knows how to coach star players. I think he and LeBron have a really good relationship. And look, if LeBron goes to Jeannie Buss or whoever is making this decision and says, if I have a vote at Doc Rivers, that's going to carry some weight. But I think it's going to be Darvin Ham.
I'm glad you also mentioned this, the staff. This is the last thing, I'm going to say about it before we move on to our last topic is that I think it was Stan Van Gundy, maybe it was Jeff Van Gundy talking about this the other day, is that the teams remaining all let their coach pick their staff. Mm-hmm. And I think that the Lakers, there's so much micromanaging going on that whoever they hire, they really need to try to just trust the hiring process and let that person, bring their own stuff. You don't want to say, okay, Phil Jackson, you pick one guy to be an assistant coach. Linda, who do you want as an assistant coach? LeBron, is there anybody from Clutch Sports that you want as assistant coach? Then it'll just be a mess from the start, with people not trusting each other. You need to have trust on the coaching staff, just like you need to have trust on the roster.
Maybe they'll have a fantasy draft, right? You hire Darvin Ham, and then, LeBron has the first pick on an assistant coach, and then you go to Linda Rambis and Kurt Rambis. Yeah, I mean, that would not surprise me with the way the Lakers are run. They win in spite of themselves oftentimes because they have stumbled into great players. They were able to trade for Kareem. They got lucky drafting Magic Johnson. They got Shaq as a free agent. And, the move they made that really worked out and showed brilliance, and it was on the part of Jerry West, was trading for Kobe Bryant after he was drafted by Charlotte and said, I'm not going there. And they traded Vlade Divac for him. Yep. That was a stroke of genius because Kobe was the 13th pick in the first round. But other than that, it's been, we're in LA. This is a great place to come and play.
Yep.
Come here and we'll win. And that's what they've been able to do. It's not like they've built a roster like the Miami Heat or the Golden State Warriors, drafting players, developing them, getting people late in the first round and seeing them, outperform where they were drafted. So, yeah, who knows what the Lakers are going to do at this point.
So we'll see. It's something definitely to keep an eye on. It's still the Lakers, even though they've been long since forgotten about for their performance this season. They're still the biggest brand in basketball, and anything they do is gonna make huge news. And so the coaching, it's the most high profile coaching vacancy in sports right now. So we will see what ends up happening there. But Sap, something we wanted to end on was that. Something I was talking about on Twitter the other day is that I know you like a lot of trolls on Fox Sports, and you enjoy a good troll just like anybody does. How do you feel about Max Kellerman?
Well, I think he's a troll, but oftentimes he's right. But again, a broken clock is right twice a day.
Wasn't about Tom Brady though. I can tell you that much.
No, but he was not the only one. I mean, I remember back in 2013 when we were working at 1510, I kept floating the idea we should trade Brady for Andrew Luck, who was going into his second year. And I'm like, absolutely you would, because Andrew Luck's 24 and Brady's,
right.
10 years older. Of course you'd make that trade. And Andrew Luck retired 4 years ago, and Brady's won 2 Super Bowls since, and probably is the favorite to win another one this year with Tampa Bay. But, I've been wrong there too. Yeah, Kellerman's a troll. All these guys that do these shows, whether it's Kellerman, Stephen A. Smith, obviously Skip and Shannon, or
Skip is
Howard.
King troll.
He's King troll. Yeah, I mean, obviously with his anti-stance against LeBron and Aaron Rodgers, but I still like him because I know what he's trying to do and he's good at it. Right. I mean,
your favorite, Nick Wright, big troll.
Big troll. Absolutely. My guy is a troll. But the thing is it doesn't make for good theater if the two hosts are sitting across from each other agreeing all the time. Now, there's got to be a little bit of nuance in there. And as much as I like Skip and Shannon when they go at it, I don't know if I can take any more debates of LeBron versus Michael Jordan. And I'm always ready, willing, and able to. That's all they talk about. There's one segment on that, if not two, every show. There's something to do with the Dallas Cowboys, and there's a Tom Brady segment. And why Aaron Rodgers doesn't measure up to Tom Brady, and they
don't you get the feeling they could just tape the show in December and replay it in July.
It's like a political show, whereas there's all these talking points. I mean, again, every day Skip is going to reference LeBron's meltdown in the 2011 NBA Finals, and you know what? He's gone to 8 more finals since and has won 4 of them. I mean, guess he's kind of recovered from it. But when you're talking about, no, it hasn't recovered. I mean, he could end up with 6 titles, equal Jordan, and he obviously never going to equal Jordan in skip size. But with Kellerman and you're talking about JJ Redick, they had a pretty good give and take. If you want a detail on what that was all about, and we can react to that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm just pulling it up so I have exactly the right information. So Max Kellerman was talking about Luka Doncic in this Mavs series with the Warriors and said that Luka doesn't make his teammates better and compared him to Magic and Larry Bird. He said, 2 guys who did definitively make their teammates better. And then Redick came back with saying Magic and Bird played with Hall of Famers. Luka is playing with second-round picks and undrafted guys, which we talked about yesterday, Sap. Remember when I broke down the whole roster of the Mavericks? It's mostly second-round picks and undrafted guys. And then Redick pulled this up. His shot quality created for his teammates is number 1 in the last 2 seasons. That's a statistic that you can go and find on Basketball Reference. That's a true statistic that Luka has found. They break down on the film and they look at the passes that Luka creates for his teammates, or every player creates for their teammates. And Luka has created the best opportunities, the most open looks for his teammates. So Max Kellerman basically pulling something out of his ass. The Mavericks aren't playing well in this series, so he's going to say, Luka's not doing a good enough job making his teammates better. JJ Redick, who actually played basketball, is coming at it with, facts and saying, well, look at who he's playing with, and then also look at the data. So we both are big Luka Doncic fans, Sap. We obviously think that he's got room for improvement, but to say that he doesn't make his teammates better, they're in the freaking conference finals, and he's playing with, like Redick said, second-round picks and undrafted dudes.
You can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit, and Luka's trying to do that as best he can. And look, here's a guy who is averaging 9 assists per game. For him to average 9 assists per game with that group of crap that he's playing with is pretty amazing. I mean, when Magic was at his full powers, he would average 12, 13 assists a game. Well, he was feeding the ball to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar,
right?
Still the all-time leading scorer in NBA history. Or he was feeding James Worthy in the low post or on the wing, or he was kicking it out to Byron Scott or Norm Nixon, hitting open jumpers. So
all those dudes would be the second best player in the Mavs, right? Or best
by
player
far.
In the Mavs.
Or I mean, Kareem would be the best player on the Mavs.
Yeah.
Worthy would clearly be the second best player. Norm Nixon's a guy everybody seems to have forgotten because he and Magic never really hit it off, even though they won 2 championships together. They were just loaded. I mean, so Magic could come down the court and go, do I feed Kareem? He's unstoppable with the hook. Worthy's great. If we're running, Worthy on the wing is the most unstoppable force in the league, which he was for a few years. Byron Scott or Norm Nixon can create their own shot, which oftentimes doesn't lead to an assist, but you get my point. He had so much to work with. Larry Bird, after his first year, had Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish, and he played with Tiny Archibald. As a rookie, he played with Dave Cowens, who was at the end of his career. And Cedric Maxwell was pretty darn good. He played with a lot of great players. Later on, Dennis Johnson. So you could make those guys better. They're already good without Larry Bird. Luka's playing with nothing. Now, obviously, we agree with Redick on this, and Redick brings a lot of data to the discussion, which is great. And that's kind of what you want to get in these discussions, is the yin and the yang. When Redick was going at it with Mad Dog Russo a few weeks ago, it got a little bit weird because Redick can be a DB, obviously, and that doesn't stand for Duke Blue Devils. It's another DB because he is so smug, right? Yeah, it is. It is kind of the same thing, but he's so smug at times. It's like, okay, dude, we know you're the smartest guy. You're the best looking guy. You play in the NBA. Okay, we give up. But he's right about this. And what Kellerman's doing is this is good theater, right? He's pushing back. If Max Kellerman was to just agree with JJ Redick, we wouldn't be talking about this. So ESPN and Fox Sports 1 understand that they get traction by having these types of discussions. I was talking with Chris Villani one time when we were talking about Fox Sports 1, which gets about 300,000 viewers per show per day, which is, is good. It's not great.
Yeah, and you're one of them.
I'm one of them. And Chris had the funniest comment ever. He says, the most traction they get is when, the Sports Hub or EEI in Boston play something their hosts say as a rejoiner. That's like the most traction they get. And Felger and Maz use Coward all the time. They'll come back after he, says something earlier in the day.
I forgot about Coward. How did I forget about Coward?
Coward's my guy, most talented man in radio, in my opinion. So that's what you do. I mean, if you just have a guy that comes out there, and look, we both love Glenn Ordway. He's a mentor of yours. Glenn sometimes would, kind of play both sides of the fence, but he was doing that as a facilitator, right? So he would get the two people in that would be
like Magic Johnson.
Glenn was setting up those guys. Glenn's the ultimate point guard, right? He would make us all look good. Heck, you and I would look good working with Glenn, right? You did work with Glenn, and you did a great job with him, by the way. He picked you out of everybody that was available, which is a compliment because Glenn is.
I was undrafted.
You were Pat Beverly, if anything.
I like that.
I'm like pick the first overall pick that turned out to be a waste. That's me. Because I was like this prodigy back when I was a kid. Me and Alex Reamer were like the two youngest sportscasters in the history of the United States. Alex has done really well. I'm kind of washed up. So pick the guy.
I know you, but you've had a long career. So it was your first round pick that never became an all-star, but was a good player.
Yeah, just kind of Joe Smith. That's good. Yeah, I'm Joe Smith. I mean, I don't want to be Odin because he had a short career with the injuries. I mean, I've got my ailments. But I'm just trying to think, I'm kind of the guy who just kind of hung around and was like, he's had a nice career. He played a lot of games, but, you got to be self-deprecating.
Made a lot of money, just like you.
Yeah, not that either. No, I've made a lot of money. I'm doing quite well. But you get my point. That's exactly what these guys want to do. So you know what? If Redick doesn't bring his argument to the table, and if Max Kellerman doesn't push back, we're not talking about this. So ESPN's winning because now people listen to our podcast are like, oh, Kellerman and Redick had some sort of dispute. Let's go back and listen to it. That's what they're supposed to do. And we do this on talk radio. We know that. If we agree all the time, no one's going to listen because it's kind of boring.
Right. And you and I agree too much, unfortunately.
That's the problem. That's the problem.
But
stop praising LeBron James and we can fight.
I really got it. You know what you need to suddenly become a big Kyrie fan, and then the show will just go.
Oh, I love his talent. I love his talent. You know that.
You need to start liking his politics and his other opinions. That will really get under my skin.
I've got one screwball that I like. His name is Aaron Rodgers. So I got to defend him. I can't deal with two of those guys.
The funniest thing ever, Sap, at the game last night, there's still a lot of Kyrie jerseys floating around, but every single one I saw, I'd say I saw at least 15. Every one has the scotch tape, the tape over the back, and then written Pritchard on it. No one's wearing a Kyrie. Everybody who bought a Kyrie jersey has replaced it with Pritchard on the back, which I think is hilarious and petty, and I very Boston, which I like.
Very Boston, and I'm sure some national hosts will paint this as Boston is racist, right? Kyrie's gone, so the white guy took his number. Now I'm surprised you don't have a Pritchard shirt because
I bought one last night. Oh,
you did? All right, good.
That was my first purchase at the Garden. I couldn't find one online, and I was like, they must have them at the pro shop here. So I got one. But now I was thinking that too, Sap. It's like, if I wear this, are people gonna, people are gonna say, oh, of course, another Boston guy wearing the white guy's jerssie. Well, no, it's because he went to my alma mater. That's why I like it.
Yeah, because I think of you as a racist from Boston. When I think of Jet, I think we're both pretty progressive with our stuff. So we push back on.
I sat next to a drunk townie last night. That was not a good situation. She asked me at one point during the game, "Are you liberal?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Liberals suck. Liberals are ruining this country." And then people behind her said, "You're in the wrong place, honey."
Like that conversation started a basketball game. That's bizarre.
At a basketball game in Boston.
Yeah. I mean, I could have seen maybe if it was a hockey game or a football game.
She's cheering for the players that I wanted to say to her, every single one of those players they were cheering for are liberal. I hate to break it to you.
Geez, they must hate Jaylen Brown, right? I mean, that must be their least favorite player. They probably were wearing a Jaylen Brown shirt. So the Pritchard shirt, is it the real jersey or is it the T-shirt?
No, it's a T-shirt, jersey. But guess how much a T-shirt jersey costs at the Garden?
It's probably up to like $50 now, or I mean,
you overshot it a little bit. It's $40. It's $40 for a T-shirt.
For a T-shirt, yeah, that's pretty good. There's not much of a markup there. It's like going to the North End for a pasta dish, and it's $37, and my mother would be rolling over in her grave if I called it pasta, because real Italians call it macaroni. It's macaroni with sauce on it, not pasta with
gravy, right?
Gravy, exactly. You're an adopted Italian. It's macaroni with gravy, not pasta with sauce. But yeah, you go to the restaurants in the North End and a dish of pasta, as they call it, $37. I'm like, pasta's about 80 cents a pound, and they're putting some nice ingredients in there. What's the markup? Like 3,000% at that point?
It's quite high. It's quite high. And
Yes.
my friend and I, who went to the game together, opted to not eat at the Garden. We went to Tasty Burger right before the game.
Good choice.
Which saved us, I'm assuming, a lot of money because the prices are just outrageous. But that's
nuts.
Anywhere listen, I'm sure the Garden looks like a bargain basement discount compared to what the prices are at Fenway Park for food. So
yeah, it just came out actually. Fenway once again is the most expensive park in all of baseball.
That's outrageous at Fenway Park.
Always
ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean a Fenway Frank, which is I couldn't eat the thing. I mean, it's like mush. It's like $6.75 for a hot dog. I mean, for a hot dog that probably cost them 12 cents and like 12 cents for the bun. So 24 cents, they mark it up to $6.75. And it's horrible. I mean, I remember when I went to Shea Stadium, Yankee Stadium, they'd have Nathan's and they'd have them grilled and they were good. And Fenway Park is just ridiculous. The prices, actually the average ticket price at Fenway is $62, which is the most expensive in all of baseball. And just figure that out. It's $2 million a game. So the Red Sox are bringing in $160 million a year just from ticket sales, and not to mention Nesson, which brings in close to $200 million, let alone the national contract and all the other stuff. I mean, they're a cash cow, but can't quite give an extension or a new contract as Xander Bogaerts. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, they're very frugal for some odd reason. I think the Red Sox also have the most expensive beer in the majors.
Oh yeah,
one of them.
Yeah. Exactly. I think it's $14 for a 9-ounce or an 11-ounce. Yeah, I mean, the other place that's good near the Garden, if you end up going to any of the finals games, and here I am, I've already put the Celtics in the finals, but for if you go to Game 6, across the street was Halftime Pizza, which is a good place, and it's still there, but it's Joe
it's so
Pachi's
different
as well.
There, Sep. It's gotten crazy different over there.
Yeah, it's Pachi's, Joe Pachi's. I know the family quite well. There's a lot of prepared Italian foods and subs and stuff in addition to the pizza. So it's right across the street, Halftime Pizza with Joe Pachi's. I haven't been down there in years, but from what I hear, sound like Johnny Carson here. I hear things. That's a good place to go as well. Yeah, because if you go into the game and you want to order sausage or hot dog, it's going to set you back, $25, $30. I mean, the pizzas are like $27 for like a personal pizza.
Yeah, no,
like one of those things you'd buy at the supermarket that's frozen. Yeah, Halftime Pizza is good with Joe Pachi's in the same place, and Tasty Burger is a good choice too.
Yeah, the way to do it is the way I did it, where you park on the Cambridge side if you can, because it's much cheaper. You do a little 15-minute walk, and last night it was very nice weather, so no problem. So then you're not paying for parking. You also don't have to deal with traffic because you're parking on the Cambridge side, and then you eat outside of the Garden, and suddenly if you parked at the Garden and you ate at the Garden, what's going to run you about the same price as what you pay for the ticket. Suddenly you're not having to pay that much. So, and you
get yelled at.
I'm the old man
for being a liberal.
And you get yelled at for being a liberal.
Yelled at for being a liberal, yes, which I didn't know that was going to happen.
The other thing I always do is every game I've ever gone to, I've bought a program.
I like that. Yeah.
Celtics. My dad started doing that, and then I just adopted the tradition. This is the last price point I'm going to ask you for. What do you think the program cost? It's a magazine, I'd say, 70-page magazine, maybe less. What's the program cost at the Boston Garden?
A lot of color pictures, glossy, that type of thing. At least it's like not a black and white old school one.
Right.
$15, $18. I don't know.
15. You hit it, Sap.
Okay.
$15 for that.
$15 for a program. Okay. That's crazy.
Yep.
Did you keep score?
I'm sure that the woman next to me blames Joe Biden for those.
It's Joe Biden's fault. Yes, the gas prices are up, and now the program has gone up. She's aware of the history of the Celtics, that they've been the most progressive franchise in the NBA and arguably all of sports. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
She said Derek White was your favorite player on the team, so I don't think she knew much about the Celtics.
She just liked his last name, right? I mean, that
that's what it was.
Yeah, it's a good. Although he does. Doesn't he look like Lester Lightbulb a little bit?
Who's Lester Lightbulb?
Google Lester Lightbulb. Derek White looks like Lester Lightbulb.
Is this a cartoon character?
Yeah, kind of a cartoon character, And congratulations, he's got a new addition to his family. But
Lester light bulb. Well, yeah, a little bit, but Derek White he has hair, and Lester light bulb is bald.
Right. No. If he decides to shave his hair, but he's got the very high eyebrows and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. So
he his kid is named Hendrix. He didn't know that Rob Williams' kid is also named Hendrix. So there's 2 Hendrix babies on the Celtics.
Nice. And they're obviously named after Jimi Hendrix.
I would imagine.
I would assume. Yeah. I mean, if you were going to pick a musician to name your son after, if you have a son or daughter, whichever you want, what would the name be? I mean, you're a big Stones fan, so would it be Mick Stryer or
it'd be Ted Nugent because I like his politics a lot.
Yes, Ted Nugent, who was actually sitting next to the woman that called you a liberal.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I'd name him after a musician. If you go back in any musician's history, you're not going to find stuff that you really want to name your child after.
No, I would name my son after Bono.
Right. That's why I'm naming my kid Garnett Pierce Stryer.
Right. There you go. Yeah. Or Smart Stryer.
Right.
That would be an interesting name. Marcus. I actually like the name Marcus. If I had ever had a kid, which at the age of 59, probably not going to happen. Thankfully for the kid and for me. Mark was the name that I liked, but it was with a C, M-A-R-C. But I like the name Marcus. But we've gone too long now, Jet. We've gotten into the silly season, but that's okay. You're in a good mood because the Celtics won. And
I am. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if they lost, this would have been a 10-minute show.
Yeah, and this set you back $350 for the ticket, the burgers, the program, and the jersey.
Yep. Thank you, Joe Biden.
Joe Biden's fault.
Yep. All right, Sap. That's going to do it for us here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Bring you back later in the week, maybe wrapping up the Warriors series if they take care of business tonight. We'll react to that. Also to the next Celtics game, which hopefully will be more entertaining for you, Sap. For me, I hope the Celtics just blow them out again.
I'm there with you, Jet. I want to see the Celtics win. I don't. Because I think the Celtics.
You want to see them win in a close game. I like to feel relaxed.
Oh no, I'll be honest with you. I'm fine if they blow them out. I mean,
okay,
I got no problem. I listened to the fourth quarter last night with Sean Grandy and Cedric Maxwell. Max was calling out for the food vendors to bring him food by the fourth quarter. So yeah, no, I'm fine with that. Look, I don't want Golden State winning the championship because then Steph Curry will have as many as LeBron, and I can't deal with that. So
they're inseparable too. So
because they're very similar players and they're at the same level, according to our former great producer Christian Burgoyne. And although Skip kind of pushes back against Steph Curry a little bit because it again enhances the narrative of Kevin Durant.
Right.
Yeah. So I know how Skip works. I know Skip's brain, which is dangerous.
Yes, very dangerous. But check out Sap's social media for more insight on the Skip Bayless's brain. At John Sapp 25. Mine is at Jet Stryer. And you can find the podcast wherever podcasts are found. So we'll be back later in the week. Thanks for listening, everybody. Talk to you later.